Okay, on to more the pest adjacent things. Barbara is saying all of her clematis, different varieties and different locations, are all doing poorly this year. Some leaves turn black and curled, some are just stunted growth and struggling. Why? I said, could this be a wilt? She said, but would it be on all of them? What might be taking out all the clematis?
Let's see, what would be taking out all the clematis other than wilt? And it can be wilt. There are some viral infections too, but they don't cause curl over
Did
problems.
somebody spray something?
Or black vine weevil.
Black vine weevil. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. We have problems with, here we go. Weevils do this notching on the leaves, and they would be notching the lower leaves of your plant, and that wouldn't be causing the wilt and the blackening, but the feeding of the larvae over the winter on the roots could be doing that. So it could be black vine weevil. They notch the edges of the leaves and they look like that. That's a weevil. They're crunchy critters, non-flying beetles with snouts. That's one thing that could be. So look and see if the lower leaves, especially the lower leaves, are notched, and they'd be notched from the outside of the leaf in. These guys don't make holes in the middle of the leaf independent of starting in from the edge. It could be wilt. Clematis wilt is a fungal disease. It's systemic in the plant. Once it's in there, it's in there. And in certain years, because the fungus develops at a certain rate and the plants are growing at a certain rate, in some years it coincides to where you get a lot of dieback. So you might have fungus, clematis wilt, that's been in your garden and has not caused a big problem. And this year, the conditions are right that it is causing a big problem. But clematis wilt will, at about the time that the plant's going to bloom, I mean, it's just that what was a nice green branch suddenly wilts and then turns black and curls over, and that whole piece needs to be cut out. Just go back to the trouble list.
Okay. Judith is saying, I just noticed white slots, maybe it might be spots, that could be mildew on a mound of oregano that's starting to shoot up and bloom. It's right next to a clump of thyme, which typically gets the same symptoms. This happens whether there's drought last year or plenty of rain this year. What might it be? What's the cause? What to do? It doesn't seem to affect the taste. The herbs have been in the same place for several years and not come back to the ground over the winter, just cut back.
Okay. It could definitely be mildew. They're mint family plants, and mint family plants are susceptible to mildew. It could be that there is something in the soil that is weakening the root system of the plants. So it's not the wet or the dry weather, but that when the plants get to a certain state of growth, that's causing that to happen. I would be digging to find out, because if I don't see a symptom, if I don't see a reason, an explanation above ground when I'm diagnosing a problem, I'm looking into the soil, because we need air, light, water, soil. And those are the things that you look at. If the air is good, or it doesn't matter, it seems to matter whether it's wet or dry, then throw that one out and say that's not what's causing it. If they're in good light, if they're in full sun, throw that one out, because those are both full sun plants. If the soil is compacted, that's going to be a problem for them.
Yeah.
Or if the drainage is poor, then you get weak stems coming up. So those are what I would be looking at diagnosis wise.
Okay. Also, because it was up a second ago, Pat's asking that picture with the black weevil, are the black dots, is that excrement? Is that beetle frass?
Was that beetle frass
there? There were a couple.
It probably was. I'm trying to remember the picture, and
I see the black dots, but I couldn't confirm it was that.
We didn't see it deposit that frass.
Yeah.
So yes, it could have been frass.
Okay, Nancy is saying a friend's white pine, it's at least 50 feet tall, is now completely dead. It looked fine in the spring, and sorry, I think I lost my mic for a moment there. My apologies. Can you hear me again?
Yeah. Yes, you're
okay.
all. I didn't.
We didn't lose anything.
Okay.
Oh, good. All right. So Nancy says a friend's white pine, at least 50 feet tall, is now completely dead. It looked fine in the spring. I see minute holes with sawdust at branch junctions. Also, an entire trunk has the white sap dried / dripped down it. Is
Yeah.
this something, multiple insect disease? What could it be?
It sounds like white pine collar weevil may have gotten it, which is a beetle that attacks at ground level and eats the cambium. As well as once you've weakened the tree, other borers get in, and as borers go into a tree, one of the tree's reactions is to pump sap through the holes. It pushes the larvae out in many cases, so you get a lot of sap falling. Generally, when you get borers in a tree, in a woody plant, the borers were able to get in and multiply because the plant was weak for some reason. But it sounds like that's probably what happened here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, excellent. Also, this was answered in the chat, but I just thought I'd draw people's attention to it, or in case you guys, Jen and Steve, had any pictures. Suzanne says that she has holes in leaves on various plants randomly around the yard, not slugs, which are easy to follow, not finding anything on the underside of leaves, ideas to look for. And when we queried about the nature of the holes, they're along the edges and they're very smooth. And it sounds like she probably has leaf cutter bees. And I wasn't sure if you had pictures of the beneficial
I didn't think to put
damage.
Yeah, it's like a real moon shaped, half moon shaped.
Very section of a circle. Yeah, leaf cutter bees, they make a very circular move. But we'll show you what our holy leaves look like here. Because there are
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciated that Suzanne was noting that they're clean cuts, the remaining tissue is okay, the plant is not suffering otherwise, that, remembering when we're diagnosing things that just because there is damage doesn't mean that it's doing harm. And in this case, you're giving leaf cutter bees, they're necessary.
Right, and plants are the bottom of many food chains. They need to be growing and eaten in order to support a whole ecosystem. So different kinds of holes, holes that are within the blade and in between veins, and you find slime, shiny little trails. I can see the snail on this one right there above your pointer, Steve.
Yeah.
Snails and slugs who operate on usually on overcast days or at night or on rainy days. They don't start from the edge. They do try to avoid veins. They just don't seem to like veins. So holes within the leaf and slime trails. Think about slugs or snails. So holes in leaves, slugs, snails in between the veins. And these we put some of them in already for you. Irregular holes that are both at the edge and inside the leaf, and you can't find anything to assign this to, consider earwigs. Earwigs are great predators of aphids and slugs and all kinds of things they eat, but they're also real good in a year when there's a lot of them at chewing your plants. So this is butterfly bush, and this is definitely earwig damage. How do you know that? You go outside at night with a flashlight and you look at the leaves then, and then you run back into the house because you just so go, oh my gosh, I just don't want to think about this.
There's occasionally there could be some leaf damage done by birds picking
insects off, which is kind of cool. Those particular butterfly bushes, that butterfly bush is over in more shade near a fir tree. There's a cover there for earwigs to crawl out. And it has been eaten repeatedly. It's only knee high. Whoops. Whereas these three that are
2, 3.
There's maybe 10 feet between the one on the right and that one that's been being eaten, are not being eaten. Maybe because they're more in the open, maybe because they have more gray fuzz on the leaf and they're not as
they're the fuzzier kind.
But this is an example of sometimes when you're looking and trying to figure out what's going wrong with the plant and why there's holes in the leaves, you may be saying, how come you don't have holes and you do have holes? And guess who is going into the compost pile?
Yeah, the one with the holes.
Yeah. And by the way, Steve, while you were over there taking pictures of this, I looked at this, and does that look to you like one of those helleborine cactus orchids? Okay, you got to watch for weeds.
I can't believe I missed that.
Yeah,
and that's the euphorbia there.
Yeah, which is okay. Okay, holes in leaves still. So bottom of this is a clematis, one of the bush type clematis called Stand By Me. And most of the damage is low to the ground and is within the blades. and between the veins. And this is almost certainly slugs, but see the notch there from the edge?
Right, this one.
Yeah, and I am always watching for weevils, because weevils can be a terrible problem that a lot of different plants.
Yeah.
So I'm watching this area to say if we got weevils moved into that area. Holes in the leaf, within the blade, slugs almost for certain. Amazingly, the clematis there has those holes in the bottom leaves, but the kiwi vine over here doesn't. Kiwi vine is a fuzzier leaf.
Yeah.
Slugs and snails don't seem to like fuzzy leaves as well.
I mean, we're showing you all these holes, but overall, there's so little damage that we're actually seeing.
Which is why our questions pictures are all pictures from right now of plants that look good.
Yeah.
Because what you want to be looking at is not overlooking the good plants. So because most of that clematis is just fine. It's just near the ground that there's some problems.
Can I jump in really quick while I'm thinking of it? I'm so sorry if this will go by. Nancy is curious about the name of the first borer you stated that enters the lower trunk and eats the cambium.
White pine collar weevil.
Okay, thank you.
If you see the flower petals being eaten, that's another earwig indication. Earwigs like soft tissue, and they'll come all the way to the top of your clematis to chew on your flowers. Mm-hmm. Don't blame the slugs for that one. That's going to be an earwig problem.
And generally, I used to always blame the slugs. I figured it was them.
Yeah. So you look and you see green and you see things growing well. That's what you should focus on. We are, however, are looking at our newer plants, a collinsonia called richweed.
This
kind of looks like a small geranium.
A little bit right here.
It's a native plant, and it's got, so you can see the holes that are within the veins and inside the blade. And this is sitting right next to the pond, as you can see, wet. Yep. There's rocks, there's probably slugs. And as long as there's not a great deal of damage, we're not going to worry about it, because there's not a great deal of damage. This is a plant that doesn't have much that goes wrong with it. It's a little chlorotic for us, but it's new, it's native, it's not grown by anybody. We don't have a whole lot of information yet on what it might need, need that we're not giving it. Whoop. But we are watching it. See that cute little guy right there? Yeah. Find out who he is. Yep. Okay, go back to the trouble list. Other holes in leaves. Let's see, weevils, vein. I think those are our main holes in the leaves issues. So there. Oh, and caterpillars. Go Lindera. Caterpillars, Lindera. There we go. If the damage is all from the outside edge, and it's extensive, it ate the veins, it ate everything. Gone. Sometimes even the whole leaf is gone, and the petiole, the leaf stalk is there, or the leaf stalk is gone. You're looking at a caterpillar problem, probably. Which Lindera, spice bush, I'm hoping
gets eaten.
Because we would like to have the swallowtail that grows, the spice bush swallowtail, on our Lindera hosting in our yard. Our little baby Lindera. Judy, this is the plant that you've been asking me about. It's 6 inches tall, and it's taken 4 years to get there. I look at that and I saw cuts like that on both Lindera. I go, well, maybe we have them. Maybe we've gotten those caterpillars. There are also things that look like caterpillars. Sawflies. You see rose sawfly, which is also called rose slug sawfly. Mm-hmm. You'll see sawfly on pine needles. You'll see sawfly on loosestrife, not purple loosestrife, but the native yellow loosestrifes. When they're little, a lot of caterpillars and sawflies scrape the leaf because they're little. So they've scraped the leaf and left the shell. How do I tell the difference when I'm looking at something? This is a hibiscus leaf. And how do I know if that's a sawfly or a caterpillar? Because if it's a caterpillar, maybe I want to keep it. Or it might be a moth, like a butylin moth. If you look at the larvae, the young caterpillar or sawfly, if it has more than 5 pro-leg sets, see those legs that are, okay, look at the front by the head. 1, 2, 3. So it has 6 legs, three pairs of legs. Mm-hmm. Those are the real legs. They also have pro legs, the things that can grip at the back of the body. And this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pro legs. 5 pro legs means it's a caterpillar. This is probably a butylin moth. it has 6 or more, it's a sawfly, and most of the sawflies hatch out into just little natty things. And most of us don't care about sawflies. If you get a lot of damage on the plant, or you have a big infestation of caterpillars or sawflies, you may want to do something about it. Go back to the trouble list and to webworm. So right now, control is for that same Coosa dog with the dead branches on one side from the fire. When I walked around the other side, I said, oh, well, here we need to do something because this tree doesn't need 2 things happening to it at once. This is called fall webworm. Comes out in July, but it's fall webworm. And it's one of the caterpillars that is a sheltered feeder, makes itself a place to live. And
around the leaf.
so as these caterpillars move out, they're making silk and they're webbing over the whole area. You see their little fall webworm is distinctive for having the double pair of dots and being yellow. Eastern tent caterpillar, which also tents the crotch.
It's the crotch.
They
earlier
feed free outside the tent. They feed out in the outside in the open, and then at night they go in the tent. These guys keep making their cover all around them
bigger.
But you can see it's scraping the leaf and making the tent bigger. This is mimosa webworm, which is very similar, and you can, as it keeps going, it's bigger. So you want to get those when they first hatch out, and you want to look at your growing degree days or your plant indicator plants and say, okay, right about the time that the hydrangea, the snowball hydrangea, is in full bloom, look for webworm on my new plants that couldn't handle that damage. And I handled that damage by taking the leaves that were involved in the nest, just the leaves, not the branch. I peeled each leaf off
and step on it,
and
or just leave it.
I left them on the sidewalk for
Let the birds get it.
Yeah, let them get them.
Yeah.
So there you go. So caterpillars can make holes in leaves, sawflies can make holes in leaves, earwigs, slugs, and weevils.
We've got some sawfly and holes in rose leaf questions here. So Judith is saying that the sawflies are turning her hibiscus leaves to lace. Yuck. What do you do to prevent?
To prevent them, you look at which ones you've got. If it's hibiscus, they may be a butylin moth, which is not a particularly wonderful moth to have around. It's just a butylin moth. I don't know a sawfly that eats hibiscus offhand, but there probably are some. You need to identify which one it is and what time they first hatched out, and start spraying the leaves off them with water. Underside of the leaf where the eggs are laid when they're hatched out, you spray that with a hard spray of water like we did with the pine adelgid. So let's that. We're going to move through this to we showed you earlier this year that on our little baby white pines, we saw some white and said, what is that? And we started spraying them with a hard spray of water. I found one spot left. And that happens to be a adelgid, an aphid relative, a sucking insect that can be a big problem on there. Now that I looked at this and saw it doing just what it's doing, it's killing needle clusters, sucking on them. And if you look close, you can see the bumps that are the insects themselves covering themselves with that protective covering. Now I scraped them off. I took my fingernail and scraped them off there, threw them into the ground. They're not going to climb back from the ground. They don't know how to do that. So these insects that are hatching out on your hibiscus, if as they're hatching out, you're cleaning the leaves off from underneath and knocking into the ground, they cannot find the leaf again. That's not the way that it works in nature, and you can get ahead of the problem then. Do you do anything with them now? You can take off all the leaves that you see sawflies on and destroy them, and the plant will grow new leaves. It'll say, oh, okay, I guess I need some new leaves. Or you can just wait until next year and deal with it next year. A butylin moth doesn't overwinter in zone 5 where we are in Michigan. It blows up every year from the Gulf states. So it is a very dependable emergence time. And I think that it's the second week of May, but I'd have to stop for a minute to look that one up.
And because they are soft-bodied insects, would a soap solution spray be effective?
Soap is effective on anything that's soft-bodied. You're right.
Though remember that these guys are often, they're hanging out on the undersides of leaves. So you have to spray kind of pointing the bottle up typically. So be, or turn over the leaves as you spray.
And I would recommend to gardeners who are trying to continue to garden for as many years as we can possibly garden, do not buy pump bottle sprayers. Buy one of the ones that you pump up to get pressure, and you can use the little hose and it pumps upside down and right side up without you continually pumping your hand.
Your hands get.
And without you having to
really-
think how you're tipping the bottle. Buy a little sprayer, a little pump sprayer.
Shelley is asking about holes in rose leaves from midrib of the leaves. Would that be the little guys, these little sawflies slash?
It's probably the
caterpillar?
rose, that's probably
Rose
the rose
sawfly.
sawfly. And as Diane,
Hey,
curse you, Diane, pointed out to me, we now have not only our native rose sawfly, but a exotic invasive rose sawfly that comes in afterwards. And they're just exactly the color of the leaf.
They're hard to see.
There are a couple generations a year, so you do need to keep up as people do with roses. It's a what was it, the Little Prince in the book, The Little Prince? The rose, he checked his volcano every day and his rose every day, didn't he?
Yeah, yep. And there were he was trying to dig out the baobabs that were threatening to take over.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you need to check roses a lot because roses grow quickly. They grow a lot of foliage. They grow a lot of lush foliage. They have a lot of insects that live on them. And so it is a matter of going out every few days to roses and looking to see what's going on. And if you squish them when they first hatch out, or when you see one that's young and just hatched out, you say, okay, they're probably elsewhere on the plant. And that's when you spray the leaves with hard spray water or soap. You're better off.
Or you get your bug squishing gloves if you want to have a dedicated pair of gloves, and they are your squishing gloves. Teresa's asking about neem oil for sawflies.
Neem oil is an insecticide that its mode of action is to either coat the insect with oil, and oil prevents them from breathing because they breathe through holes in their skin. So it smothers them. Or neem oil, not just any oil, but neem oil inhibits the development of the insect to its next stage. They can't shed their skin, and they literally get killed inside a skin that won't expand and crack open and let them move to the next state, which I think is an awful thing to think about, but it's
effective.
Yeah, it's very effective. So it works in one of two ways, or perhaps in both ways, depending on what kind of insect you're using it on.